it was a zero threat. Right from the start, it was zero threat. Look, they went in. They shouldn't have done it. Some of them went in and they're hugging and kissing the police and the guards. You know, they had great relationships. A lot of the people were waved in, and then they walked in and they walked out.
Still delusional. Joining our conversation, Luke Broadwater is here, New York Times congressional reporter. Also joining our conversation, Neil Katyal, former acting U.S. Solicitor General, Georgetown University law professor, and lucky for us, an MSNBC contributor, and Elizabeth Msnbc, former Assistant Secretary for Threat Prevention and Security Policy at the Department of Homeland Security. She's now the co-director of the Republican Accountability Project. Neil, I'll start with you. It feels a little bit like covering the Dominion and Smartmatic lawsuits, that if in our political arena, if in the Senate there weren't enough votes to convict Donald Trump for incitement, that perhaps a lawsuit such as this will hold him accountable. Can you just give us your assessment of that backseat legal analysis?
I think that's right, Nicole. I don't think this lawsuit is surprising in any way. I've been waiting for it. I mean, the fact is Donald Trump fomented violence. Even Liz Cheney said it. And Mitch McConnell, as you were just playing, literally invited this lawsuit on the floor of Congress. So it's hard to say, as the Trump defenders will, you know, whoever is left defending him, that this is a political lawsuit, because major Republicans are saying there's gravity behind this lawsuit, that Donald Trump conspired and gave aid and comfort to what happened on January 6th, and that he perpetrated this big lie, and a big lie that has all sorts of corrosive effects on our democracy. We see it playing out in Georgia as kind of giving aid to this ridiculous voting law and the like. And so it's illegal what Trump did, and it's immoral. And at its best, the law captures those things. It captures vile acts of wrong. And just if I could read one excerpt from the lawsuit, this is what the complaint said today, quote, Officer Hemby was attacked relentlessly. He was bleeding from a cut located less than an inch from his eye. He had cuts and abrasions on his face and hands, and his body was pinned against a large metal door, fending off attacks. So when Donald Trump says that these folks were hugging and kissing the guards, my God.
No, I want to read some more from it, because you're right. That is the news today, this new lawsuit. Luke, let me read to you what became, during impeachment, in both the House debate and in the Senate trial, central for the Republicans who voted with the Democrats, and that was Donald Trump's conduct while the insurrection was ongoing. So let me read this, also from the lawsuit. For several hours after the mob had stormed the Capitol, Trump had the continuing ability to issue statements through traditional and social media, but refused to communicate anything to his followers that might discourage their relentless assault and battery on James Blassingame and Sidney Hemby and their fellow officers at the Capitol. Trump thereby ratified the conduct of his followers and ensured that the assaults on the plaintiffs and fellow officers would last much longer, worsening the physical and emotional injuries of the plaintiffs and other officers. When he finally did make statements late in the afternoon, Trump further ratified the conduct, and when he again said that the election had been stolen by fraud and that his followers had every reason to be angry, and by announcing support, praise, and love for his followers. All that, Neil, happened in plain view. I covered it in real time, astonished. Does it also leave him open to more legal exposure?
Absolutely. I mean, if you could short Donald Trump right now, and, you know, this would be a good time to do so. I mean, everything you're saying, Nicole, is absolutely right. And, you know, this in conjunction with kind of new developments going on in New York with respect to Weisselberg and the like. I mean, you know, Donald Trump is in serious trouble. And, you know, the difference between now and the past is that the Republican Party and senior officials in there are inviting this trouble now and saying that there's merit to it.
Luke, you have, I think, the definitive piece of reporting about a half a dozen contacts, associations, appearances with House Republican members and some of the militia groups that we know to be under scrutiny. Many of them have been charged since your piece of reporting came out. But I wonder what the reaction is among Republicans in Congress to a lawsuit like this, from what, with history as a guide, is a natural alliance, Republicans would say, between Republicans and law enforcement.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a moment of some soul searching for members of Congress. Shortly after the attack, there was widespread anger among the Republicans I talked to on the Hill about what happened and Donald Trump's role in it. And particularly, as you pointed out, his lack of doing anything after the attack broke out. Kevin McCarthy famously had this very angry phone call with the president, urging him to do more to call off the attack. In that time, after those initial hours, though, it seemed many Republicans made the calculation that they needed to align themselves more deeply with Donald Trump because they heard from their base, who was still very loyal to him. So again, now we're seeing new details come out. This is now the second officer who's gone on record to say he was called the N-word by the mob, documenting the racism and the personal anguish and mental strife that many of these officers went through. And will Republicans now hear these messages and rethink the relationship with Donald Trump? I'm not encouraged that will happen. I don't think that will happen, but it will be a test for each of them to consider this evidence and decide what to do about it.
Elizabeth Newman, I'm going to apologize to you in advance for what may have to be an interruption to take an important speech from President Biden when it begins. But I'd like to get you on the record, one, on the lawsuit, and two, on what Luke's getting to. This investment, it would seem, on the part of Republicans to rewrite the truth, rewrite the history, which has been chronicled in the New York Times and by NBC News and many other news outlets as a horrific and violent attack on the Capitol and on the country by Trump supporters.
You know, it struck me as remarkable that now we're hearing eyewitness accounts of people that were actually attacked. And while members of Congress were themselves part of those, that they were victims too, but not nearly the way that the 140 plus law enforcement officers were victimized. And to hear their firsthand accounts, it is impossible to keep trying to revise this history. And so Republicans have a problem on their hands. They keep trying to move on, and they have Trump out there trying to rewrite the story as if they were hugging and kissing with police officers, that you hear people say, oh, these were just political protesters. They crossed the line. They trespassed. They shouldn't have done that, but they were peaceful. This description, first-hand account from a law enforcement officer who, by the way, in their training is trained to be able to document things like this, it is anything but peaceful. And it is clearly racist in what one of the officers faced. So I don't know how the Republican Party, given that this is just the first of what is expected to be many such lawsuits coming up, I think their strategy is wrong. You had that memo that came out today from Axios that says that they need to lean into Trump. I think that's a bad strategy for them because this is not going away. The Republican Accountability Project is going to keep reminding voters if their congressman supported the big lie and did not condemn the insurrection, we're going to remind their voters. The strategy needs to be rejecting Trump, not cozying up to him.
Well, and Luke, everything that they're doing seems to sort of have at its nexus the continued adherence and servitude to the big lie in pushing laws disguised as election security when there really isn't a problem in this country of systemic or widespread voter fraud, blocking the formation of a 9/11 style commission. Is there any prospect where we have any bipartisan commitment to an investigation like the 9/11 Commission into the 1/6 attacks?
I'm not encouraged that we'll have bipartisan buy-in into the January 6th attack. The closest thing we have going on right now is in the Senate. We have a series of hearings that both Amy Klobuchar, Roy Blunt, and others are running, looking into what went wrong on January 6th and some investigation over there. But the House bill, as proposed, is stalled right now to get a 9/11 style commission off the ground. I do think, as you mentioned, this moment for Republicans in choosing which path to take is